Although minorities were not treated well in American society, their efforts during the war were essential to the nation's success during World War II.
Almost immediately after the December 7, 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, the loyalty of all those Japanese descent living in America, regardless of citizen status, was called in question. That February, Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which authorized the War Department to establish military zones in much of the western United States. This order ended up placing 117,000 of Japanese descent into internment camps, 4,000ths of the U.S. population, and a third of the Japanese American population, with at least 1,860 dying of medical reasons. However, this was not part of the 6 million Jews killed in Germany or the 7 million killed in the Soviet Union. Under this order, residents in the foreign enemy ancestry could be placed under surveillance, detained, and even relocated by military fiat. Few Americans of European ancestry were detained under this order, which was primarily directed at those of Japanese descent. Eventually, more than 110 Japanese and Japanese Americans living on the U.S. mainland were forcibly removed and interned into 10 relocation centers. Determined to prove their loyalty to the U.S., a regiment was created entirely of these Japanese American soldiers. Originally having 4,000 men at the start of the regiment, in April 1942, the 442nd expanded greatly. Eventually, almost 14,000 soldiers would join, with over 700 killed or missing in action. They became the most decorated unit in their size in military history. In less than 2 years of combat, the 442nd earned more than 18,000 awards, including 9,486 Purple Hearts, 4,000 Bronze Stars, and 21 Medals of Honor. In the 442nd's earlier battles of Hill 140 and Castanella, the division lost 255 men, and along another were injured, which took out 9% of their manpower, which was not much compared to the fact that the infantry alone took out 1,400 German soldiers.
The Navajo Indians were assigned to diverse a code in their language that would baffle the enemy listeners. At first, skepticism arrived along with the Native Americans. However, Johnston staged tests under simulated combat conditions, demonstrating that Navajos could encode, transmit, and decode a 3-line English message in 20 seconds. Machines of the time required 30 minutes to perform the same job. Convinced, Vogel recommended to the Commandant of Marine Corps that the Marines recruit 200 Navajos. In May 1914, the first 29 Navajo recruits attended boot camp at Camp Pendleton, California. This first group created the Navajo Code, initially 211 words, expanded to 411. Since Navajo is only a spoken language, there was not a written alphabet. The Japanese could not get a dictionary to figure out the words as they were said. Of the 50,000 Navajo, there were 420 code talkers. Over the course of World War II, 16 of these Navajo code talkers were killed in action. The age of these men were between 16 and 25. Their unique skill set provided themselves when, at Iwo Jima, the entire operation was directed by Navajo code. During the 2 days that followed the initial landings, I had 6 Navajo radio nets working around the clock. They sent and received over 800 messages without error. Were it not for the Navajo code talkers, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima. Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Peleliu, Iwo Jima. These Navajo code talkers took part in every assault the U.S. Marines conducted in the Pacific from 1942 to 1945. They served in all 6 Marine divisions, Marine Raider battalions, and Marine parachute units, transmitting messages by telephone and radio in their native language, a code that the Japanese never broke. At a time when America was still segregated and blacks were thought not intelligent enough to learn how to fly, 1,000 black airmen trained and flew out of Tuskegee Field in Alabama. This was an all-black group of pilots sent to fight for a still racist America. Despite having the odds against them, the Tuskegee Airmen persevered, flying more than 15,000 individual missions in Europe and North Africa during World War II. Their impressive performance earned them 850 medals, including 150 Distinguished Flying Crosses. In addition to some 1,000 pilots, the Tuskegee program trained nearly 14,000 navigators, bombardiers, instructors, aircraft and engine mechanics, control tower operators, and other maintenance and support staff. Training happened in slower second-hand P-40s and P-39s, but defense on the group of avocation led to better P-51s. A popular myth arose during the war, and persisted afterwards, that in more than 200 escort missions, the Tuskegee Airmen had never lost a bomber. The truth wasn't uncovered until years later, when a detailed analysis found that the enemy aircraft shot down at least 25 bombers they escorted. Nonetheless, that was a much better success rate than the other escort groups of the 15th Air Force, which lost an average of 46 bombers. They had destroyed or damaged 36 German planes in the air and 237 on the ground, as well as nearly 1,000 rails and transport vehicles and a German destroyer. Those high statistics came with some loss, however. In all, 66 Tuskegee-trained aviators were killed in action during World War II, while another 32 were captured as prisoners of war after being shot down. Still, more than 300 of the original Tuskegee Airmen were on hand to receive the Congressional Gold Medal from President George W. Bush in 2007.